There comes a moment when you no longer recognize yourself. The things that once lit you up now only feel exhausting. The places that once felt alive suddenly become unbearably loud. The people who once meant everything now leave behind nothing but emptiness. You think you are losing energy, but in truth, this is the moment your soul begins to wake. Carl Jung once said, "Awakening does not come from adding more, but from letting go of what no longer belongs to us." Those who awaken do not walk away all at once. They release slowly, piece by piece. Not because they are weak, but because every release is a lesson. Every letting go is another chance for the soul to relearn how to breathe. Have you ever felt like a stranger in your own circle of friends? Sitting there, smiling, nodding, while deep inside you feel a distance too heavy to name. Have you ever tried to prove yourself, to perform, only to one day stop and ask, "Why am I even doing this?" In that instant, praise no longer matters. All you long for is something simple, to just be yourself. That is the sign. Those who are truly awakening no longer feel at home in their old shells. They no longer crave approval, no longer need to appear special, pretend to be happy. They begin to withdraw from habits once mistaken for meaning. From the outside, people call it change. From the inside, it is a return. This video is an invitation to look at the things an awakening soul gradually lets go of, not as a loss, but as a way of finding itself again. And if you see yourself on this path, stay until the end, because in that moment, you will know. There comes a stage in life when you notice you no longer react the way you used to. A compliment that once made your whole day now fades the moment you hear it. A gathering that once filled you with excitement now leaves you drained. Conversations you once forced yourself to join suddenly sound like meaningless noise. Others may think you've grown cold, distant, even strange. But in truth, this is the first sign of awakening. You are slowly leaving behind what no longer nourishes you. Jung believed that every major shift in the soul begins with small signals, symptoms that seem trivial at first. You stop chasing approval at any cost. You stop trying to prove you are special. You stop pretending to be happy when you're already exhausted inside. This isn't pessimism. It is the body and mind refusing to keep swallowing what is false. Just as eating food you're allergic to makes you weaker with every bite, the soul begins to develop an allergy to everything inauthentic. In daily life, this becomes clear in subtle moments. You sit in a meeting where everyone is laughing, praising, clapping loudly. Yet inside, you hear a quiet question, "What am I really doing here?" Or, you post a photo online, receive hundreds of likes, but the joy evaporates within seconds. The validation no longer feels safe. Instead, you feel drained from the constant effort to keep up the mask. The challenge is that others won't understand. They will call you negative, cold, or even unmotivated. But the truth is, you haven't lost anything. You are simply refusing to consume illusions that were once sold to you as truth. And that is why this stage often feels lonely. You can't explain it clearly, because you are only just realizing it yourself. The real problem isn't that you are withdrawing from the crowd. The problem is you don't yet know how to name what's happening. You might mistake it for depression, for loss, for losing direction. But in reality, this is the first step of awakening. You are not becoming weaker. You are simply refusing to accept what no longer feeds your soul. That is the reason this video exists. To help you recognize that what you are letting go of is not a sign of losing your way, but proof that you are reclaiming your true self. And if you stay patient through this process, you will realize what feels like loss is actually space. Space for you to finally breathe again, Carl Jung once reminded us, the growth of the soul does not come from adding more, but from the ability to let go. And this is exactly what the spiritually awake are going through. They are not adding new layers of identity, but slowly removing the old ones. From the outside, others see them as closing off, but at a deeper level, they are moving closer to their true self. Why is this so difficult for most people to understand? Because society itself is built on personas, on masks. Everyone is taught to be polite, pleasant, successful, and shining. You are praised when you please others, when you hide your sadness well, when you pretend you are always fine. And it is at that very moment that you learn to cut yourself off from your essence. Jung called this identification with the persona, when someone begins to believe that they are the mask. When a person begins to awaken, they can no longer tolerate that mask. An empty compliment feels suffocating. A conversation full of small talk feels hollow. Even promises of happiness according to common standards echo back like meaningless noise. The body and soul begin to reject the performance because performing means betraying yourself. You can see this in everyday life. Someone who used to be the center of every party suddenly appears less often. They no longer feel the need to prove their worth through the crowd's attention. Someone who once sought love in fleeting relationships now chooses silence instead of rushing in. It's not that they've lost motivation. It's that their motivation has shifted from the outside to the inside. Yet this inward turn comes with a challenge, the shadow. When you stop running after the persona, you are forced to face the parts of yourself you once buried. Insecurity, fear of abandonment, the sense of not being enough. This is why many confuse awakening with crisis. In truth, the crisis is only the beginning, the moment when the shadow rises to be seen. Jung believed that only by confronting that darkness directly can we move into individuation, the process of becoming whole. Take another example. When you stop seeking absolute certainty, at first you feel lost, but gradually you learn to stand steady within uncertainty. You discover that not every question needs an answer, not every door must be opened. Uncertainty itself becomes a space where the soul can breathe. This is not a loss. It is a form of maturity. And this is the connection between Jung's philosophy and modern experience. Those who awaken are not losing themselves, but peeling away what was never truly theirs. They are not spiraling downward. They are shedding weight to walk lighter. Others may only see them as giving up, but in reality, they are stepping out of the wrong game to return to the real one. If you recognize yourself in this journey, subscribe to keep going deeper with Jung. Thank you for being here, because this presence itself is the real value of this channel. There is something few people dare to admit. We don't just stumble into old habits by accident. We are pulled back into them by an unconscious loop. Jung once said, "What is not made conscious returns as fate," and that fate often arrives disguised as what feels natural, but is in truth nothing more than the repetition of a psychological pattern we have never faced directly. This loop begins with our deepest need, the need to belong. As children, we learn that to be loved, we must behave, be pleasant, and hide the feelings labeled as bad. From there, we construct the persona, the social mask. That mask gives us safety, but it also cages us. You grow up believing that only when you please others are you worthy of being accepted. And that belief marks the beginning of self-erosion. The spiritually awake often painfully discover this truth. One day, they feel suffocated by their own life. They still go to work, still socialize, still appear fine in the eyes of others. But inside, it feels like a room without air. You can endure for hours, days, or even years. But eventually, the body and mind revolt. You begin to reject what is false, like a survival reflex. This is where unconscious defense rises. You find yourself drained by shallow conversations. You lose interest in relationships that skim the surface. You start quitting, not loudly, not with announcements, but quietly, slowly stepping back. Outsiders think you're negative. In reality, you are breaking the loop they have not yet seen. At a deeper layer lies projection. When you don't dare to live authentically, you project your longings and fears onto others. You think they dislike you, but in truth, that is the part of you that has not accepted yourself. You think they are judging you, but in truth, you are the one judging yourself. And in reverse, when you enter awakening, you realize those external judgments are nothing but mirrors. You stop being trapped inside them. Then comes the breaking point. It could be the moment you notice your own laughter at a party sounding more forced than ever. It could be the moment you unlock your phone and feel nothing for the things that once hooked you. Or the moment you leave a conversation emptier than when you walked in. These breaking points are doors. Once you walk through, you can no longer pretend. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow. The shadow is not something monstrous. It is the part of you you never dared to see. The fear of abandonment that made you cling to approval. The fear of meaninglessness that made you seek certainty. The fear of not being enough that made you exaggerate just to be noticed. When you find the courage to face them, the loop loses its power. You see clearly, what you are leaving behind is not yourself, but the dust that has covered your essence. This is why the process is slow. Awakening is not cutting everything off in a single day, because the shadow does not vanish through willpower alone. It needs to be seen, acknowledged, and integrated. Step by step, you learn to choose differently. You learn to be silent instead of forcing a smile. You learn to step back instead of continuing the act. You learn to say no instead of bending for approval. These are not losses. They are the first steps toward freedom. Imagine your life as a backpack you've been carrying for far too long. At first, it was light, just a few essentials. But over the years, you kept adding more. Your parents' expectations, the praise you once craved, the fear of being abandoned, the roles you had to play just to be accepted. Slowly, the backpack grew heavier. You kept walking, kept smiling, but your shoulders had been sinking under the weight without you even noticing. Those who are not awake get so used to the burden that they call it normal. They learn to live with it, even boast that they can carry more than others. But someone who is awakening can no longer endure it. Their body aches, their soul feels drained, and they realize the problem is not the path, it's the overloaded backpack. So they begin to open it, not to throw everything out in one day, but piece by piece. Today, they set down the need for universal approval. Tomorrow, they let go of the desire to always be special. And slowly, what once seemed precious reveals itself as unnecessary weight. With each item they release, their breathing becomes easier, their steps lighter. The backpack metaphor shows us the true nature of quitting slowly. It is not about loss. It is about liberation. Each item you let go of does not take anything away from you. It only gives you back the ability to move freely. And most importantly, you are the one who decides what stays and what goes. No one else has the right to open your backpack for you. Jung once said, "We are not defined by what we hold on to, but by what we dare to release." The backpack is just an image, but it mirrors the entire journey of awakening. You cannot enter your life with lightness if you insist on clinging to what has already expired. You cannot find a new path if you keep carrying yesterday's baggage. And when you finally look back, you will see what exhausted you was never the length of the road, but the weight of the things you didn't need but refused to put down. As the backpack grows lighter, you realize something profound. You were never weak. You only needed your shoulders back so you could truly live. Try to pause for a moment and hold a mirror up to yourself. Have you ever left a conversation feeling more drained than when you walked in? Have you ever forced a smile just to make someone else comfortable, only to feel breathless afterward, as if you had lost a piece of yourself? Have you ever said yes to things you wanted to refuse, simply because you were afraid of disappointing someone? These are not harmless habits. They are heavy objects you've stuffed into the backpack of your life for far too long. Those who awaken are not different from you at the starting point. They too once laughed when they didn't want to laugh. They too once bent themselves just to fit in. But then they began to notice the suffocation that followed every act of pretending. They heard the sigh behind the closed door, the small voice inside whispering, "I don't want to live like this anymore." That was the moment they began to let go. If you do not change, the loop only tightens. You will keep showing up in places your soul does not want to be. You will keep posting things that aren't true, just to receive likes that aren't real. You will keep holding on to relationships that leave you lonely, even with someone sitting beside you. And one day, you will realize you are too exhausted to take another step. Carl Jung once warned, "Not listening to the soul is the surest way to lose it." When you ignore the signals of fatigue, you are not only deceiving others, you are deceiving yourself. You lock yourself inside an overloaded backpack, then wonder why life feels so unbearably heavy. But imagine this. What if you started putting things down, one item at a time? What if you learned to say no when you needed to? If you chose silence instead of a forced smile? If you dared to be alone instead of clinging to hollow connections? Would your steps feel lighter? Others may be surprised, and they may even criticize. But deep inside, you will know one truth. At last, you have given your shoulders back to yourself. You once believed that letting go meant losing. That's when you stepped back from a gathering. You lost friends. That is when you rejected a hollow compliment. You became arrogant. That's when you said no. You disappointed someone. But that is only the old language, the language planted in you to keep you trapped in the loop. The truth is, letting go is not about losing. It is about reclaiming. Every time you say no, you are saying yes to yourself. Every time you pause, you are not falling behind. You are simply choosing a different rhythm of breath. Carl Jung once reminded us, true freedom begins the moment we stop betraying ourselves. Betraying yourself is not only about the big lies. Often, it is small, almost invisible. A nod you didn't want to give, a smile you didn't want to show, an invitation you didn't want to accept. Awakening begins when you learn a new language, the language of inner honesty. You stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "What does my heart truly need?" Try shifting the way you speak. Instead of, "I'm tired, but I'll go to keep everyone happy," you say, "I need rest, and that does not make me selfish." Instead of thinking, "If I don't pretend to be happy, they will leave me," you realize, real joy never needs to be performed. This is how the new language takes root. From submission to sovereignty, from pretending to presence. Reframing does not make you a rebel. It makes you awake. You are not abandoning the world. You are simply refusing to let the world define you. When you realize you don't need a persona to exist, you finally breathe again. When you stop needing to be special, you see that your ordinariness itself is a miracle. And when you stand in solitude, you understand it is not a void. It is space for your true self to step into the light. Others may not understand. They may call you cold, negative, or lost. But that is their language, not yours. Because once you find your new language, you no longer need their judgment. The silence inside you is enough to affirm that you are still here. And that is real power. The power of someone who has stopped betraying themselves. Remember this: if you continue to live by the old language, you will carry an overloaded backpack for the rest of your life. You will grow old in pretense, and one day, looking back, you will realize you never truly lived. But if you dare to choose a new language, if you choose honesty over performance, breath over strain, presence over disguise, you will step out of the loop. And if you stay until the end, you will see a truth most people never recognize in time. The process of letting go was never about taking anything from you. It was about giving back the part of your life you abandoned for too long. And once you reach that moment, there is no turning back. Let's return to the image of the backpack. You cannot empty everything in a single day, but you can start with the lightest items. The first practice is to pause for 5 seconds before agreeing to anything. Ask yourself, do I really want this? If the answer is no, practice the courage to set that item down. Second, choose one simple situation each day to be a little more honest. It could be when you're tired. Rather than forcing a smile, admit that you need rest. That small honesty is like removing a single stone from your backpack. The relief is immediate. Third, write down 3 things you have done only to please others. Then ask, how many of these truly nourished me? This act of writing is the same as opening your backpack and looking directly at what you're carrying. Fourth, dedicate some time each week to being alone. Not to isolate yourself, but to hear your inner voice again. In the quiet, you will know which items have become too heavy and which ones are still worth keeping. Finally, remember this: letting go is not about resisting the world. It is about learning how to choose. It is about turning the backpack from a chain into a tool, carrying only what is truly needed. Every small action you take today is one less burden on your shoulders, one step closer to the freedom your soul has been longing for. There is a truth few dare to face. If you never begin to put down that backpack, it will only grow heavier. The price of not changing is not just momentary fatigue, but a silent exhaustion that accumulates year after year. You will keep smiling when you don't want to smile. Keep saying yes when every part of you wants to say no, and keep staying in relationships that make you feel lonelier than being alone. One day, you will wake up and realize you have become so used to ignoring yourself that you no longer know what your own true voice sounds like. Carl Jung once said, "What we deny controls us, and what we accept frees us." If you keep denying, the shadow will rule you. The fear of abandonment will keep you clinging to others. The fear of meaninglessness will push you to chase false certainties. The fear of not being enough will make you live in hollow displays. But when you begin to let go, you are no longer led by that darkness. You see it, you name it, and from there, you have the power to choose differently. The quality you gain when you dare to change is lightness. You realize you need far less than you thought to live fully. You discover that small joys, a deep breath, an ordinary day, an honest conversation, hold more value than any performance. And you begin to build confidence not from how others see you, but from your own inner alignment. This path is not easy. There will be days when you doubt yourself. Am I losing opportunities? Losing friends? Losing my place? But if you are honest, you will see that what you are losing is only an illusion. What you are reclaiming is freedom. And freedom is not loud. It doesn't need to be proven. It shows itself in the quiet peace of no longer straining, in knowing you can live without betraying yourself. Jung believed that awakening is a spiral. We fall into repetition many times. We carry too much and then let go again. But each cycle brings us a little higher. And it is that patience which makes the journey. You don't have to release everything today. You only need enough courage to set down the first item. From there, the backpack grows lighter, and the road ahead begins to shine. Picture yourself standing halfway up a hill. Behind you is a heavy backpack. Ahead of you is a clear, open path. No one is forcing you to put it down, but your shoulders already know the answer. Letting go is not failure. It is the courage to choose a different way of walking. Carl Jung once said, "A man does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." Awakening is not about piling on new masks. It is about facing what has covered you for too long: pretending, fear, the habit of living to please others, and setting them down one by one. This journey is not a straight line. There will be days you want to turn back. There will be doubts about whether you are doing the right thing. But each time you are honest with yourself, each time you place one unnecessary item down, you will feel it more clearly. You are not weaker, you are lighter. And that lightness is the sign that you are returning to your true self. This video is only a small doorway. What matters is whether you dare to step through and begin by setting down just one thing today. It doesn't have to be much. Just one will be enough for you to notice the difference. And perhaps, in the next video, you will discover another key, unlocking another part of yourself, the part you left behind in all the years of carrying what was never yours to bear. Letting go is not an ending. It is only the beginning.